By the way, the name of that poem for Anthony Kim, who was a backstroker for Texas A&M, was called The Fly Guy. And it goes on and on and on. It's all in rhyme, one right after another. And it's pretty much predicated on that 2 or 3 decade battle that Dave Armbruster had with the FINA to get some sort of an acceptance of the dolphin butterfly, which we might well have had in the early part of the 1930s, instead of it becoming an autonomous stroke in January of 1953, I think, following the Helsinki Olympics. But that aside, thank you, Annette. She mentioned, well, first of all, Mel mentioned the award itself. And that's what I want to talk about with a little preamble here. Almost 4 decades ago, a 50-year-old nobody from nowhere, USA, wandered into the Indianapolis Athletic Club from the high desert of the American Southwest to support Father Jim Lacasse's initiative to preserve the NISCA Prep School All-America team. Our efforts in that regard prevailed, however, temporarily. And I want to tell you that it was at that meeting that I met a few people in this room. One of them was Richard, and I swear to God, he looked like he was about 15 years old. You can do the math, and I haven't yet, Rich. That was in 1980. And it was then that I saw for the very first time the Collegiate Scholastic trophy. There's a picture of it in your program. And even now I can remember how taken I was with its regal presence among the other awards. Regal, I suppose, because of its statuary excellence. So with your permission, I'd like to make a few remarks about that statuary and Joe Brown, the man behind the sculpture. To begin with, Brown's sculpture is a stunning, visually stunning piece of work. More than any other so-called athletic trophy I know of, Brown's depiction of that signature link between athlete and coach captures the essence of each of us, who we are, what we do. We teach, we counsel, we coach, we communicate, we motivate, over and over again. In the very best of times, we may even inspire. I would suggest that it is the power of this kind of communion that infuses the seminal moment of Brown's sculpture. Maybe we could define that moment as a benediction of sorts, not entirely a spiritual one, of course, but a coaching one. I'm speaking here of that emotional tie that binds a swimmer to a coach and a coach to a swimmer, the two-way stretch of which, as we all know, is woven by trust and mutual respect. Although we cannot see the swimmer's face in the sculpture, we sense what Brown is trying to convey here. Maybe nothing more than simply the art of coaching. We need no dots to connect the sculpture's protagonists. The line of their implied communion says it all. Squatting at poolside, the coach gestures, speaks. The swimmer listens, with arms akimbo and eyes we cannot see, although the tilt of his head suggests they are uplifted. He appears almost as a supplicant of sorts. This frozen choreography, shaped in clay, then cast in bronze, is a moment that each of us knows well. We've been there before, maybe hundreds of times. Or, as in the case of our Downies sitting over there, maybe even 1,000 times. Whichever, we recognize the territory. We comprehend the connection, both the physical and the psychological. And so must have Joe Brown himself, as an athlete and as a coach, and certainly as an artist. Joe Brown grew up in the Devil's Pocket, a rough and tumble slum in Philadelphia, where he quickly learned the necessity of defending himself. His mentor in all of this was his older brother, Harry Kid Brown, a well-known professional boxer of that area and era. Joe yearned to follow in his brother's pugilistic footsteps and even fought a few fights professionally under an assumed name. But in the end, ironically, it was Harry's influence that turned him away from the manly art of self-defense and toward other sports, especially football. Brown ultimately won a football scholarship to Temple University, where he played for 2 years, before abandoning the game to become captain and coach of the Temple boxing team. Following his graduation from Temple, in the beginning throes of the Great Depression, Brown received temporary employment posing for artists at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. Posing led to amateurish tries at sculpting. Eventually, his work caught the eye of noted Canadian physician and sculptor extraordinaire R. Tate McKenzie, a man who spent most of his professional life as a professor and department head at the University of Pennsylvania. It was that vital connection that allowed Brown to serve a 7-year apprenticeship to McKenzie, while also serving as Princeton University's boxing coach. In 1939, Joe Brown began teaching a sculpture course himself and ultimately became a full professor in Princeton School of Architecture. McKenzie was primarily known as a monumentalist, specializing in public monuments and war memorials. Brown's point of passion was, of course, sport and the arrested motion of athletes. In its genesis, the Collegiate Scholastic Trophy appears to have been an intercollegiate award only, and by any measure, not an interscholastic one. Beginning in '59 and continuing for a decade, the recipients of the trophy were all college coaches. And for the most part, coaches who appear to have been honored retroactively, since most gained their reputations in the first half of the 20th century. Columbia's Ed Kennedy, Bob Kipeth of Yale, Matt Mann of Michigan, Ohio State's Mike Pepe, and Dave Armbruster of Iowa were the first 5 coaches to receive the award. A few years later, Soichi Sakamoto, the head coach at the University of Hawaii and founder of the 3-year swim club, made famous recently by the writing and research of Julie Checkaway, would be honored. Together, these were the coaches who brought light to the dark ages of American college swimming. More importantly to NISCA, they also acted as godfathers or guiding light for interscholastic swimming. There were many others, of course, who contributed to the development of our sport. But in the first half of the 20th century, at least, these were the men of intercollegiate swimming's Mount Rushmore. In 1969, the first interscholastic coach to be awarded the trophy was, of course, David Robertson, also known as Mr. NISCA, from Nutria High School. Nutria's always there, always in the ear, which rhymes with Nutria. and he would receive the award. A decade would pass before another high school coach would receive the award. 1979, then, became the first year that the true duality of the award we recognize today would be observed. See Ted Brannon from McKinley High School in Canton, Ohio, and University of Michigan coach Augie Steger became the first dual recipients of the trophy. Over time, the giants of the second half of the century would emerge and become recipients of the award. College coaching gurus like Doc Councilman and Ernie McCleisco, and USC's Peter Dalen, as well as interscholastic icons Dick Hanula, George Schoenheider, and Urs Sari. In more modern times, college names like Thornton, Reese, Marsh, Quick, Ubanchik, Gambrill would grace the trophy. Arm in arm, if you will, with not only the giants of interscholastic coaching, but with the stewards of NISCA as well. Men named Allen, Stetson, Wolf, Lantrue, Kay, Cassia, and that guy with the unpronounceable, tongue-twisting name, Waslavovich. Had to practice for a year before I could finally pronounce that correctly. And oh yes, one woman. Where is she? Marnie Shirley. Where are you, Marnie? There you are. Congratulations for being the only one so far as the interscholastic sector is concerned. Joe Brown once said, sculpture should do something for people. He often referred to the art form as an act of thinking, feeling, shaping. Well, isn't that what we coaches do? Something for others? Shape swimmers in much the same way as Joe Brown shaped clay? I think so. That thought brings me to the doorstep of this traditional moment, this incumbency, if you will, to thank NISCA and its award committee for recognizing this old coach this afternoon as he makes that final turn in his coaching career and heads down what certainly must be the last length of more than half a century's presence in this truly extraordinary sport we all share and serve. I'm proud to be a minute part of that mission, that history, that legacy. And I can't begin to tell you how privileged and blessed I feel to be here among you this afternoon, and of course how honored and humbled I am to receive this most prestigious recognition. Thank you all for that and for listening too.